They crossed paths for just 30 seconds. She didn't ask for his name. She didn't expect anything in return. But her one small act of kindness in the pouring rain would change everything. What if the man you helped on a rainy day turned out to be one of the richest men in the city? And what if that man couldn't stop thinking about you? This is a story about kindness, fate, and how even a quiet gesture can echo through someone's entire life. The rain came suddenly, thundering down on the streets of Chicago like it carried secrets from the sky. People dashed for shelter. Umbrellas popped open like blooming flowers, and cars sent splashes onto the sidewalks as they rushed past. Lena Carter didn't have much. At 22, she worked 2 part-time jobs, one at a florist shop in the morning, and the other at a cozy corner cafe in the evenings. She walked everywhere, took care of her sick mom, and somehow, despite everything, kept a light in her heart that hadn't been extinguished by the struggles of life. That afternoon, she was on her way to the cafe, carrying her newly purchased pink polka-dot umbrella, a rare indulgence she'd allowed herself after saving a little from her last paycheck. It wasn't much, but it brought her joy. As she neared the crosswalk near 7th and Main, she saw him. A man stood at the bus stop, tall, well-dressed, clearly not someone who belonged in the rain without an umbrella. His expensive suit was soaked, his shoes ruined, and he held a dead phone in one hand, staring at the screen like it had betrayed him. Something about his expression made Lena slow down. He wasn't just annoyed. He looked lost. Her first instinct was to keep walking. She was already late, and the rain had soaked the hem of her jeans. But then she glanced again. He didn't look like someone used to being ignored. And yet everyone was walking past him like he was invisible. She stopped. Her heart raced. She said softly, barely audible through the rain. The man looked up, startled. Lena took a deep breath and stepped closer. You can take mine." He blinked at her. Water dripped from his brow, but it wasn't the rain that stunned him. It was the gesture. "You don't have to," he started, but she was already holding out the umbrella. "I'll be okay," she said, her eyes not quite meeting his. "Really?" And with that, she pressed the handle into his hand and turned away, walking into the storm. Ethan Vale stood frozen. Billionaire. Theo. Founder of one of the biggest AI firms in the country. A man used to private jets, penthouses, and press interviews. But in that moment, all that melted away. He looked down at the small pink umbrella in his hand. It was such a simple thing. But no one had ever offered him kindness like that. No strings, no recognition, no agenda. Just kindness. The girl hadn't asked for his name. Hadn't tried to flirt or take a photo. She'd simply given and vanished into the storm. For someone like Ethan, whose world had always been built on transactions, negotiations, and guarded interactions, the gesture felt strangely foreign and deeply human. He covered himself with the umbrella and got in the first cab he could find. "Where to, sir?" the driver asked. Ethan hesitated. I don't know." Later that evening, Lena arrived at the cafe late, dripping wet but trying to act like everything was normal. Her coworker, Julia, raised an eyebrow as she handed her an apron. "Girl, you're soaked. What happened to your umbrella?" Lena smiled faintly. "I gave it away." "To who?" Lena shrugged, pretending it didn't matter. "Just someone who needed it more." Julia shook her head in disbelief. "You're something else." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He'd had meetings, emails, calls, but his thoughts kept circling back to that girl. The way she didn't hesitate. The way her eyes held a kindness that felt like warmth in the cold world he lived in. He didn't even know her name. But he needed to find her. The next morning, Ethan made a call to his head of security, Mark. "I need a favor," he said. Mark sounded confused. "Another stalker case, sir?" "No. I need you to find someone for me." "Who?" Ethan paused. "A girl. She gave me an umbrella yesterday. Pink. Polka dots." She walked away before I could ask her anything. Silence on the other end. Then laughter. "You want me to track down a girl because she gave you an umbrella?" Yes, Ethan replied, dead serious. I don't know who she is. But I need to find her. Mark sighed. You've really lost it. But orders were orders. And within an hour, Ethan had access to the nearest street cam footage from the rainstorm. Meanwhile, Lena went about her day like nothing had happened. She didn't expect anything. She wasn't even sure the man would remember her face. But Ethan remembered everything. Her wet hair, her hesitant smile, the way she looked at him like he was just another person. When Mark pulled up the footage and zoomed in on her face, Ethan's heart raced. That's her, he whispered. Mark gave him a look. You're serious about this? I want her found. Quietly. No media. No pressure. I want to thank her. Properly. But what Ethan didn't know was that Lena's life was far more complicated than it looked. Her world was about to collide with his in ways neither of them could have predicted. Because sometimes fate doesn't just knock, it storms in. Lena Carter had never thought much about the man she helped in the rain. To her, kindness wasn't something you did for recognition. It was something you did because the world already had enough coldness. And if her small pink umbrella could shield someone for a while, it was worth getting soaked. She hadn't told her mother, Marianne, about it. Not because she didn't want to, but because her mother had been struggling to breathe all night. The meds weren't enough anymore. And the public clinic had pushed their next appointment 2 weeks ahead. So Lena did what she always did. She put on her apron, tied her hair in a bun, and headed to her cafe shift at Bean's Delight, trying to leave her worries behind the counter. But something felt different that day. The cafe wasn't particularly busy, but there was an air of expectation hanging in the air. Her manager, Dale, kept looking at her strangely, like he was waiting for her to mess up, or for something to happen. She shook it off, grabbed the order pad, and started her shift. By mid-afternoon, a man came in alone. He wore a navy trench coat, sunglasses, and had the air of someone too put together for their small cafe. He took a seat at table 7 by the window. Can I get you something? Lena asked politely, trying not to stare. The man didn't take off his glasses. Just a coffee. Black. No sugar. She nodded and turned away, but she could feel his eyes following her. It sent a chill down her spine, not because she was scared, but because something about him reminded her of the man in the rain. She shook the thought. Couldn't be. What Lena didn't know was that Mark, Ethan Vale's head of security, had come to see her in person. Ethan had wanted to be there himself, but Mark convinced him to let someone else observe first. Let me make sure she's not going to sell your name to the tabloids, he had said. But the moment Mark saw her, how she greeted an elderly woman with a warm smile, how she offered a free cookie to a crying toddler, how she carefully wiped down the table before serving, it was clear. This girl wasn't looking for anything. And Ethan had been right. She was rare. Mark finished his coffee quickly, left a generous tip, and stood to leave. But before walking out, he placed something on the table, a small folded note with a silver emblem embossed on the back. Lena came to clear his cup moments later and saw the note. Her heart skipped. She looked around, but the man was already gone. With shaking fingers, she opened it. Thank you for the umbrella. You don't know how much it meant to me. I'd like to return the kindness. No phone number. No name. Just an initial. Her mind raced. Could it be him? She remembered his soaked figure in the rain, the quiet way he had looked at her. Confused, vulnerable. She'd thought he might have been a businessman. But something about this note, the paper, the weight of it, the emblem, felt expensive. Deliberate. Was he really trying to find her? Across town, Ethan stood at the top floor of Vale Tech headquarters, staring out the massive glass windows. He clutched the umbrella, the same one she gave him, now dried and neatly folded. He'd kept it in his office. A reminder that not all kindness came from polished boardrooms and luxury circles. He wasn't sure why he couldn't stop thinking about her. Maybe because she didn't treat him like a billionaire. Maybe because she saw a man soaked and stranded and chose to help, not knowing, not caring who he was. Ethan had seen people change their faces once they realized his status. But she hadn't known. And she had still helped. It haunted him, in the best way. Back at the cafe, Lena's thoughts were spinning. She slipped the note into her pocket and finished her shift in a daze. But as she stepped out that evening, clouds had begun to gather again. And with them, something else. As she turned the corner toward the bus stop, a black car slowed beside her. The window rolled down. A voice, deep and composed, called out, "Miss Carter." Lena froze. A man in a crisp suit leaned out slightly. "You don't know me. But my employer asked me to find you. He wants to meet you. Privately." Her heart thundered. "Why?" she whispered, instinctively stepping back. "Because you changed something in him," the man said softly. "He hasn't been the same since that day." Lena didn't know whether to run or stay. "I'm not here to pressure you. Just take this." He handed her a card. Silver embossed. Elegant. Thin veil. Private contact. She looked up in shock, but the car had already pulled away. That night, Lena sat by her mother's side, watching the machines beep softly. She traced the edges of the card again and again. Thin veil. The name was familiar. From news articles, magazines. He was that Ethan Vale. And somehow, he was looking for her. Not for fame. Not for a transaction. But for a moment she barely remembered. "Do you believe in fate, Mama?" she whispered, stroking her mother's frail hand. Her mother, half asleep, smiled faintly. "I believe in the power of kind hearts. And I believe..." Lena stared at the silver card repays again. Kindness. It had been 3 days since the black car stopped her. Across town, 3 days Ethan since that mysterious man Mark. No calls yet. Had given her no Ethan message, Vale's personal but contact. Deep down, something she hadn't told anyone she would come. Not even her closest co-worker Mia. Felt too surreal, too delicate. But the longer she waited, the louder the voice inside her grew. What if he's not like the others? What if this is fate knocking? Her fingers hovered over her phone, hesitating. Until finally she sent a simple message. "Thank you for your note. I'm glad you're well. I'm open to meeting. Lena." She barely had time to second-guess it before a reply came through. "Tonight, 7 p.m. Valentina's. A car will pick you up. Valentina's. The most elegant restaurant in the city. A place Lena had walked past 100 times but never dared to enter. Her stomach twisted with nerves. She looked down at her clothes, her worn jeans and plain blouse, and realized she had nothing suitable. But Mia, ever the lifesaver, showed up at her apartment with a soft lavender dress and a pair of barely worn heels. "Wait. You're going on a dinner date with who?" Mia asked, eyes wide. Lena blushed. "It's not a date. Just someone I helped." Mia raised an eyebrow. "Someone who sends limos and dinner reservations to Valentina's? Girl, don't be so humble." Lena tried to smile, but her heart was pounding too loud. The car arrived right on time. A sleek black luxury vehicle with tinted windows. As she sat in the back seat, watching the city lights blur past, Lena's mind raced with questions. What would he be like in person? Would he even remember her? What if he was arrogant? What if he was cold? What if she didn't belong in his world? Valentina's was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers sparkled like stars, violins played soft melodies in the background, and waiters moved like dancers across the marble floor. But all of it faded the moment Lena saw him. Ethan Vale stood up as she entered, dressed in a crisp charcoal suit. His eyes softer than she remembered, lips curving into a gentle smile. "You came," he said, as if he himself was surprised. "I almost didn't," she admitted. "I'm glad you did." He pulled out her chair like a gentleman from a forgotten time. The moment she sat down, a warmth spread between them. Not of romance, not yet, but something deeper. Recognition. They talked over dinner. About the rain. About the moment she handed him her umbrella and walked away. "I was having the worst day of my life," Ethan confessed. "I just walked out of a boardroom full of betrayal. People I trusted turned against me. I was angry. Done. And then, Lena asked quietly, you showed up. With that ridiculous pink umbrella. Lena laughed softly. Hey, that umbrella saved your life. It might have, he admitted. You didn't ask me who I was. You didn't ask for anything. You just helped. Do you know how rare that is? Lena looked down at her napkin. I don't expect rewards for kindness. Ethan leaned forward slightly. That's exactly why I needed to find you. They talked about books, about his love for photography, about her mother's illness. Ethan listened, not with the patience of a man being polite, but with the intensity of someone genuinely interested. You take care of her by yourself, he asked. Lena nodded. I work at the cafe. I freelance right at night. The bills pile up, but she's all I have. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, you remind me of someone I used to know. Someone who never gave up. Who was she? Lena asked. My mother, Ethan replied softly. She raised me alone, scrubbed floors, made me promise to stay humble, no matter how successful I became. She sounds wonderful. She would have liked you, he smiled. After dinner, he walked her to the car, but instead of saying goodbye, he asked, would you take a walk with me? Under a starlit sky, they strolled along the quiet park near the restaurant. The city glowed behind them, but here it felt like time slowed. Why me? Lena asked suddenly. Why go through all this trouble? Ethan stopped walking. Because when you gave me that umbrella, you did something none of my billions could buy. You gave me humanity. I hadn't felt that in years. Lena blinked back emotion. No one had ever said something like that to her. I'm not anyone special, she whispered. But that's the thing, he said, stepping closer. You are. For the first time in years, Ethan Vale felt like a man. Not a tycoon, not a CEO, but someone real. And Lena. She felt something stir in her chest. A cautious, tender feeling that made her wonder if fate really had written their names beside each other. But just as the night grew warmer, a shadow loomed. Across the street, hidden in a parked car, a camera clicked. A reporter zoomed in on their faces. The headline would hit the gossip pages by morning. Ethan Vale's mystery girl. New love or hidden past. And the world Lena Carter had been invisible in was about to shine a spotlight far too bright. The next morning, Lena was awakened not by her usual alarm, but by the sharp buzz of her phone, over and over again. Mia had texted, 3 missed calls, 4 unread emails, and a 5th notification that made Lena's blood freeze. Ethan Vale's new mystery woman. Who is the girl with the pink umbrella? She clicked the link. There was her picture, grainy but unmistakably her, walking beside Ethan, laughing under the park lights. Her lavender dress, her nervous smile, and underneath, sources say she may be an ex-lover, a hired companion, or a former employee. Who is Lena Carter? Lena's heart pounded so loudly it felt like the walls were shaking. She jumped out of bed, trying to catch her breath. The tiny apartment she'd called home suddenly felt suffocating. A second article followed, even crueler. This one suggested she was a gold digger, a waitress looking for a quick fairy tale. The cafe phone wouldn't stop ringing. By the time she got there, her manager's face was pale with panic. Lena, what's going on? He asked, waving his tablet with a headline. I didn't ask for any of this, she whispered. Customers were whispering, pointing. A regular she'd served coffee to for 2 years wouldn't even look her in the eye. By noon, her manager called her into the back. I'm sorry, Lena. But until this all dies down, I think it's best you take some time off. Her apron slipped from her fingers as she walked out. Back at home, her mother noticed the silence. What's wrong, baby? Lena forced a smile. Just tired. But her mother wasn't fooled. She reached over and took Lena's hand, softly saying, You gave someone your umbrella, didn't you? And now the rain found its way to you. Lena looked up, eyes stinging. Meanwhile, Ethan Vale was in damage control mode. His PR team tried to downplay the rumors, but the media was ruthless. Everyone wanted to know who Lena Carter was and why he was seen with her. His assistant brought him another folder of press clippings. Ethan tossed it aside. "Enough," he growled. "I need to see her." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Ethan, maybe giving her space is better. She's not used to this." Ethan shook his head. "She helped me in the rain. I won't let her face this storm alone." That night he showed up at her apartment. She didn't answer the first knock. Or the second. Only when he whispered through the door, "Lena, I'm not leaving until you talk to me." Did she open it, barefoot in a hoodie, her eyes tired and red? "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "You shouldn't have to deal with this alone," he replied. Lena stepped aside and Ethan walked in. The tiny space was humble. Books stacked on corners, her freelance articles on the desk, and a photo of her and her mom taped to the fridge. "So this is your world," he said, looking around gently. She nodded. "It's not much. It's more real than anything I've ever had," he replied. They sat on the worn-out couch, side by side. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then she broke the silence. "They called me a liar. Leech. Said I must have slept my way into your life." Ethan clenched his fists. "You did none of that. You gave kindness when I had nothing to offer. I owe you the truth." Lena looked up. "What truth?" Ethan took a deep breath. "There's a reason I collapsed in the rain that day. I wasn't just tired. I was dying." Her breath caught. What do you mean?" "I was diagnosed with a heart condition. Stress-induced. My body gave out. The doctors told me I had months left unless I changed everything. So I walked away. No security. No phone. No company. Just me." Lena's hand flew to her mouth. "I was supposed to get on a flight. Go to Switzerland for treatment. But after you helped me, I stayed. Because in that moment, I realized something." He turned to her fully, eyes sincere. "You gave me more than your umbrella. You gave me a reason to live." Tears slipped down her cheeks, quiet and uninvited. "I didn't do anything special," she whispered. "You saved me," he said, reaching for her hand. "Now let me protect you." Lena hesitated. Every part of her heart wanted to lean in. But then she remembered the headlines, the stares, the fear. "What if I can't survive in your world, Ethan? What if I don't belong in your story?" Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her cheek and said softly, "Then I'll rewrite the story." But the world wasn't done testing them yet. The next day, a woman appeared at the cafe, asking for Lena. She wore a tailored dress, red lipstick, and a gaze cold as marble. "I'm looking for the girl who thinks she can steal Ethan Vale." Lena froze. "Who are you?" The woman smirked. "I'm his fiancée." Lena stood frozen in the cafe's back alley. Her apron clutched tightly in one hand, as the sharply dressed woman stood before her like a storm in heels. "I'm his fiancée," she repeated, her red lips curling. "So whatever fantasy you're living in, it ends now." Lena's throat went dry. I didn't know, he never mentioned." The woman waved her off with a scoff. "Of course he didn't. That's how men like Ethan operate. They get bored. They create drama. They play the hero." Lena stepped back. Her mind was spinning. "No, Ethan's not like that." The woman's smile sharpened. "Oh, sweet girl, he's exactly like that. And let me guess, he told you he's dying. How convenient. He's been pulling that one for years. It's his way of making women feel special." Lena's heart was slamming against her ribs. Doubt, sharp and sudden, cut through her chest. What if she was right? What if this was just another rich man's game? But that night, as rain poured hard against her window, the door knocked once again. Ethan stood there, drenched, breathless, as if he'd run through the storm just to reach her. "You didn't tell me you were engaged," Lena said before he could speak. He blinked, confused. "What?" "A woman came to see me. Said she was your fiancée." That you do this. That you lie. Realization dawned across his face. And with it, fury. Clara, he muttered. My father's choice. Someone the board approved for PR. But I never agreed to it. I ended that months ago. Then why is she saying otherwise? Lena asked, voice cracking. Because people like her don't know how to lose, Lena. They don't understand love unless it comes with conditions. Ethan stepped closer. I haven't lied to you. Not once. I was ready to give up everything. My company, my name, my legacy. Just for a few more hours in your world. The only thing I didn't tell you is how much I love you. Lena's breath caught. Say it again, she whispered. I love you, he said, softer now. Not because you helped me in the rain, but because you didn't ask for anything in return. For a long moment they just stood there, the sound of rain thundering between them. Then slowly, Lena reached for her umbrella, the same faded pink one she'd handed him on that first rainy night, and opened it above them. Their fingers touched. And in that moment, the storm didn't feel like an ending anymore. Felt like a beginning. 6 months later, the headlines had changed. From waitress to woman behind the empire. The untold love story of Ethan Vale and Lena Carter. But Lena didn't care about the articles anymore. She now ran a community foundation with Ethan, focused on helping strangers who were struggling in silence. People like her mother, like she had once been. And every time it rained, they'd leave umbrellas on bus stops, park benches, library steps, each one with a tiny tag. Be kind. You never know whose life you're saving. One afternoon, as a summer storm rolled in, Lena stood outside a small bookstore where she and Ethan often met. A young girl sat on the curb, soaked, clutching a broken school bag. Without a word, Lena walked over, held out a fresh umbrella, and smiled. Here. You look like someone who could use a little cover. The girl looked up, eyes wide. Thank you. Why are you being so nice? Lena's smile deepened. Because once, someone changed my life in the rain. And I promise to keep the kindness going. Conclusion. So maybe it wasn't just an umbrella. Maybe it was a seed, planted during a storm, watered by tears and hope, and grown into something that would live forever. In a world chasing wealth and headlines, Lena reminded everyone that love doesn't always come crashing in with fireworks and diamonds. Sometimes, it just quietly shows up with an umbrella in the rain.